It is really difficult to know where to start, because at the beginning of the week, we were gearing up to do a video on why Lando Norris would start off the beginning of the end of Max Verstappen at Silverstone. This was because, in the hours immediately after Austria, public pressure had started to build up, threatening to shatter the Max Verstappen and Red Bull glass house. However, dramatic recent developments have unveiled so many factors, indicating that Lando Norris and McLaren are too soft to end Max Verstappen and Red Bull's reign of terror. But before going further to explain why, we invite those of you who haven't yet done so, to like, comment, share, subscribe, and click the notification icon, to be notified when our next video is uploaded. We particularly enjoy the comments, many of which are informative whether for or against our viewpoint. We just ask that people observe the community guidelines, so that we can have the type of frank exchange of opinions which the mainstream media seem intent on curbing. That being said, we will now set out why we are of the opinion that Max's lapdog, Lando Norris, and his fawning team, McLaren, are too soft to end Max and Red Bull's reign of terror. Startling developments since Max extended his championship lead last week, by causing a collision that ended the race of his nearest competitor, show quite clearly that lapdog Lando and his light orange McLaren are too yellow to confront the dark orange Red Bull monster. Seeing what has happened during the week can be likened to watching a victim of domestic abuse going back to their abuser, after loudly protesting the breakup of the relationship in the immediate aftermath of a violent assault. This is exactly what has happened between lapdog Lando and his master, Max. In the hours immediately after the race, Lando came out barking. He called Max reckless, stupid, and desperate, while declaring that he would lose respect for him if he didn't apologize. Max, on the other hand, asserted that he had done nothing wrong, while his bad-tempered mentor, Helmut Marko, slammed Lando for being pathetic. Well, surprise surprise, a few days later, with an apology not forthcoming, Lando performed a breathtaking handbrake U-turn, befitting of a Formula One driver, with no genuine championship aspirations, to declare that he no longer required an apology from his reckless, stupid, and desperate busy mate. David Coulthard, another of Max's lapdogs, had warned Lando that hell will freeze over before he would receive an apology from their master. So, why did Lando not know this about his busy mate? Perhaps like many lapdogs before him, he thought their relationship was so strong that his master would not do him the way he did others before him. A bit like those victims of domestic abuse, who keep living in the false hope that their serial abuser would stop abusing them. At present there is a mathematical chance of Lando overhauling Max to win the title race, but by the time Max has done him a few more times, it will be all over bar the shouting. Perhaps, Lando will be happy settling for the consolation prize of Max's friendship and free jet rides to and from races. How many times does Max have to kick this lapdog before it bites back? In a clear nod to the victim mentality that should have flagged Lando up as a loud barking lapdog with no bite, he ended his furious tirade at Max by pleading that there was nothing he could do if the rules are not followed. Well, we have news for you, Lando. There are several things you can do. First and foremost, stand by your words and don't withdraw your demand for an apology. Secondly, end your so-called friendship, because the slogan, "A dog is a man's best friend," doesn't apply to human lapdogs. Thirdly, let Max know that if that's the way he wants to roll, that's okay with you. Fourthly, you could have looked to renowned Max busters, like Charles Leclerc and Sir Lewis, to learn what to do. It was 5 years ago in Austria, when in a trial run for 2021, the FIA stole victory from Charles, and handed it to Max, when they rewrote the rules mid-race, to allow him to get away with unlawfully barging Charles off the track. At that time Charles, with a steely resolve, absent of any hysterics, disagreed with the FIA ruling, and famously declared that if that's how we're going racing from now on, so be it. He promptly gave Max a good thumping at the very next race, which, as fate would have it, was the British Grand Prix at Silverstone. At that race, Charles, with a slower car and more aggressive driving, was able to overtake Max on several occasions and stay ahead of him, until the FIA were again forced to rewrite the rules mid-race, to allow him to overtake by exceeding track limits. Of course, we all know how Sir Lewis repeatedly trounced Max, who had the faster car in 2021, and was cruising to the title in the last race of that season, before the FIA again stepped in to rewrite the rules mid-race to grant the victory and the title to Max. Compare the quiet resolve with which Charles and Sir Lewis set about enhancing Max's reputation of crumbling under the pressure of close-quarters driving, to the loud barking of the lapdog Lando, who rejected his golden opportunity to apply pressure on Max's known weakness. Why did Lando not stand on his public demand for an apology from a reckless, stupid, and desperate Max? Could it be that Max threatened not to play computer games with him anymore, or offer him free jet rides? Or could it be that Liberty Media had a word in the ear of his boss Zak Brown, who then had a word with his team principal? After all, Andrea Stella, in the hours immediately after the Austria race, publicly invoked the ghost of 2021, to blame the collision on the FIA's failure to properly address Max's past transgressions. Never mind that in 2021, Lando and McLaren were in the forefront of the gaslighting of those very transgressions that have now come to bite them in the behind. Why would Lando and McLaren lend themselves to easing the off-track pressure on Max, which had meant that the FIA and Max had to tread carefully at Silverstone? Could it be that they have been held hostage to the shame of their 2021 gaslighting, so they have to be muted in their criticism of the FIA today? How could they not appreciate the reputational damage that will come from performing the type of shameful U-turn that Toto and Mercedes did back in 2021? Max and Red Bull are expecting to face a public backlash at Silverstone this weekend, but somehow Lando and McLaren have valiantly stepped in front of them to take some for the boss. Can you imagine that? Oh, what a tangled web we weave, when we conspire to deceive. Lapdog Lando and fawning McLaren have now put themselves in the frame for sharing some of the criticism, when Monster Max and Red Bull inevitably transgress again in the future. Much in the same way that victims of domestic abuse sometimes share the blame for enabling their abusers to abuse other victims. Lando and McLaren have contrived to reassure Max that the tight lead that he has them on is still secure, such that he can yank it any time, should they attempt to stray ahead of him. As for Johnny Herbert and the FIA, they will continue to ensure that the public disaffection with Formula One will continue to grow, as they continue to minimize Max's transgressions. Any reputational boost that Johnny got from speaking out against Abu Dhabi in 2021 is fast evaporating, as he was part of the stewards that put forward the false narrative that they gave Max the maximum punishment available under the rules. This narrative has been roundly debunked. To begin with, the FIA stated that Max was punished for causing a collision in breach of Appendix L, Chapter 4, Article 2D of the FIA International Sporting Code. However, Max was also in breach of Article 2B, which relates to moving under braking. The FIA were silent on this breach, which is the one that has generated the most public attention. In addition to the obvious video evidence, Lando himself stated that Max moved under braking 3 times, while others have said up to 5 times. Max's denial of moving under braking has in effect been vindicated by the blatant failure of the FIA to address the matter. In addition, Max was also in breach of Section 26.10, which requires a driver with serious mechanical difficulties to leave the track, but he received no penalty for finishing the Austrian Grand Prix, with the serious damage that he incurred from the collision with Lando. By contrast, for a similar offense in Canada, his teammate suffered a 3-place grid penalty in the next race, while the team was also fined. So, in effect, the FIA minimized Max's breaches of the sporting code. In what should be a serious warning sign to Lando and McLaren, the media have highlighted the fact that his U-turn makes him appear weak. So, Lando is now coming under pressure to perform another U-turn and revert back to the energy that he had shown in the hours immediately after the Austrian race. If he should fail to match Max's energy when the next confrontation happens, then he and McLaren will only have themselves to blame. As lapdog Lando, fawning McLaren, the FIA and the F1 media struggle to curb the monster that they created to topple Sir Lewis, public disaffection with F1 is growing. There is a delicious irony in Sir Lewis watching on in silence as Max, who was booed in Spain, expects to face a public backlash in England for what he did to Lando in Austria. But, with a weak Lando, who is currently Max's closest rival, showing that he does not have what it ultimately takes to face down the monster, what hope is there for the 2024 season?